Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. Rubik's Cube and Cheerwine. We're set to go.
Yes, sir. It's all you need. Rubik's Cube, showing the complexities of the tax code, and Cheerwine, because it's from North Carolina, and so are we.
Absolutely. Although I live in Florida now, and as you can see, I'm pulling for the University of Alabama, but I am from North Carolina, so I love the North Carolina barbecue and the Cheerwine. Looking forward to getting some. I'm not sure exactly when this particular episode is going to stream, but we'll be up there live on WTOB on October 19th. And again, I don't know if this episode is going to stream before or after that. But anyway, we'll have that a little bit later for the folks to see. But all right, let's get going here on FAIRtax Power. I hope you saw last week's program. That was kind of cool when your artificial intelligence was bringing up objections to the FAIRtax, and we were having fun. It was like a shooting gallery as we were trying to shoot them all down. That was fun.
Yeah, boy. That was it, man. And the big thing is the tax code is used to curry favor with our representatives by major interests that are trying to pick up the losers, and it's a very comfortable relationship for the lobbyists and the elected officials because the lobbyists have people that want to get into business with the representatives, and our representatives have to have money to get reelected. And it starts after they've out of office for the next session. Now they're back at it. So
that's what we're going to look at today on FAIRtax Power Radio, just the massive extent to which lobbying money affects everything coming out of Washington these days. But first, we need to get back to our regular Congress.gov here segment so we can show the folks what the Congress critters are trying to do to the tax code. And at the top of the list for today is S 2818 from Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Now, this is actually a companion bill. This had not been filed by the time when we saw this one last time. The companion bill, H.R. 5298, we put in the Hall of Shame because this is the Excessive CEO Pay Act of 2025. So I say we've already touched on the House version of this, but we'll touch on the Senate version. It says pretty much the same thing real quick before we move on. And that is, it's going to try, let's see, I've got now my computer is just sitting here running around. I'm trying to get into the text of it, and it is messing me up here. But anyhow, it's just basically saying that they want to impose an additional corporate income tax on those corporations. Oh, here we go. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to impose a corporate tax rate increase on companies whose ratio of compensation of the CEO or other highest paid employee to median worker compensation is more than 50 to 1. So the House version of that bill went into the Hall of Shame a week or two ago, and this one probably should go right in there next to it.
That's something else. It really is. And the Congress.gov search shows just how convoluted some of the requests are for our representatives to bring certain items to their floor in Congress.
All right. Next item up for bids on the Congress.gov segment today comes from down here in Florida, Representative Stevie of District 17, H.R. 5366, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to codify and extend the rules for personal casualty losses arising from major disasters, translate that, hurricanes that hit Florida, and the rules for the exclusion of gross income of compensation for losses or damages resulting from certain wildfires.
Really is something. Just that might not be a bad idea, but why in the tax code,
Yes, bills like that are the reason that the tax code is just horribly long, horribly complicated, totally incomprehensible. Folks can't understand it at all. Moving right along, this is H.R. 5349, the Tax Court Improvement Act. Representative Nathaniel Moran from District 1 out in Texas And hopefully my computer will dig into the text faster this time than it did the last time. Aha, there it is. And H.R. 5349 is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to improve services provided to taxpayers by the Internal Revenue Service by providing greater judicial review. I got a better idea. Why don't we provide better service to taxpayers by not having an Internal Revenue Service, and you have a tax system that is so simple a fifth grader could understand it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm all for it. Sign me up.
Oh, mercy. I tell you got to have a tax code that is so complicated, so vague, so self-contradictory in places that the Internal Revenue Service and the tax professionals representing the taxpayers, just can't agree on what the code actually says. They end up in court a lot. So the fact that their tax system even needs a court to resolve those kind of disputes is indicative of the fact that the tax system we got stinks and needs to be replaced.
Yeah, exactly. Out. Out.
Yes. Okay. This is a cool one. This is HR 5346 from Representative Grothman of Wisconsin, the Fair and Accountable IRS Reviews Act. Now, actually, I get the advanced copies of the chairman's report that AFHT President Steve Hayes writes. We have Steve on the program with us every now and then. He writes a weekly column called the Chairman's Report. And he has written one on this particular bill, and I'm not sure off the top of my head when that particular CR is going to be published, but this is the Fair and Accountable IRS Reviews Act. And it says it wants to amend the Internal Revenue Service to reform certain penalty and interest provisions. Now, to elaborate on that a little bit, what they want to do, this bill wants to make sure that anytime an IRS employee determines that a taxpayer has earned a penalty from the IRS of some kind, that penalty determination is seen by, approved by, and signed off in writing by the employee's immediate supervisor. Apparently, sometimes these employees were figuring out, aha, we need to nail this guy with a penalty, and someone other than their immediate supervisor was signing off on it. And so this bill is going to say, all right, wait a minute, if an IRS employee determines that a taxpayer owes a penalty, the employee's immediate supervisor is going to have to go along with it and authorize that in writing.
Without a doubt.
All right. One more. This is HR 5336 from Representative Delia Ramirez of Illinois. They call it the Equal Tax Act. And if you get into here, and if my computer will go fast enough that I can dig into the text right away, the Equal Tax Act is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to equalize treatment of capital gains and earned income. But I can almost certainly guarantee you that what they want to do, capital gains are currently taxed at a lower rate than earned income, as of course, a way to try to incentivize investment, which helps the economy. But now this particular congressperson wants to equalize treatment of capital gains and earned income. In other words, tax them at the same rate and remove that incentive that people have to invest.
Yeah, you got to. The whole point of risk taking, I would think, if you are going to put your money at risk in a market or in a small business, you have to protect yourself, and you know that it won't necessarily bear fruit. And the best way to handle investment, at least a little more assuredly, is with the fair tax as opposed to the current method of with the federal government with regard to tax collection.
Yes, if you really want to equalize tax treatment across the board for everything, get rid of the Internal Revenue Code that is full of all kinds of exemptions and loopholes and stuff. Replace it with the fair tax, because that is exactly what you get with the fair tax. Equal tax, equal treatment for everybody. Nobody pays taxes on their basic necessities. Beyond that, the more you spend, the more tax you pay. End of story. And that's about as equal as you can get. So, Representative Ramirez, you need to sign on to HR 25.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, well, we had enough fun digging around in the Congress critters place today. But as we mentioned last week, what we're going to do this week is we're just going to go digging around in a place called OpenSecrets.org. Steve Hayes turned me on to this place several years ago. It is a collection of data which is compiled from public sources. I mean, nothing is no secret confidential information is being disclosed here. But it shows we mentioned last week on the program in passing just how incredibly expensive it is to run for office. In other words, the people in Congress and the Senate literally have to buy their jobs every 2 years for congressional representatives, every 6 years for senators. I mean, how would you like to have to buy your job there at the radio station every couple of years?
If I have to do that, I'd retire.
Indeed. Absolutely. Well, we got a lot of folks up there in Congress that should retire, but that's a different issue. We're not going to dig into that. But we mentioned just how incredibly expensive it has become. Now, theoretically, the congressional people up there, the representatives, your congressional representative and your state's two senators, theoretically anyway, they are supposed to represent you. They are supposed to represent the best interests of the people in their district that voted for them and sent them up there. But unfortunately, because it costs so it's incredibly much to keep your job every election cycle you come up, that these people end up being beholden to an army, and I mean an army of lobbyists up there in Washington that are representing special interests. They have got much, much, much deeper pockets than just about anybody out there in the voting population, unless your name is Donald Trump or Elon Musk or something like that. But it's just incredible. And we looked at this a little over a year ago at how much money is being spent on lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C. And we figure, all right, it's a year later. We've got a year's more recent figures to look at. So let's just dig in here to opensecrets.org. And right off the top of the bat, they have got a chart showing total spending by lobbyists. And this chart goes all the way back to 1998. And in 1998, total lobbying spending on all causes and all bills and stuff like that was $1.45 billion. And if you jump up ahead to last year, 2024, the last complete year in the books, total lobbying spending, $4.44 billion. Lobbying spending has more than doubled, has nearly tripled over the last 25 years. And so as it's just become increasingly and increasingly and increasingly and increasingly more expensive to run for office, the influence of these lobbyists versus the influence of the voters back home, it's getting all out of whack. It's just insane.
Absolutely. We don't know how many lobbyists are currently registered with Congress. Around 13,000 in early 2025. Now, the Lobbying Disclosure Act requires individuals and organizations to register when they meet certain criteria, such as spending 20% of their time on lobbying activities and making multiple contacts with officials. So there you go, around 13,000.
Okay, well, I think you could poke around here in opensecrets.org all day long, but they've got a list of the most heavily lobbied issues in Washington. And they've got it broken down by both the number of clients that are actually lobbying on this issue and the actual number of lobbyists that have been employed to lobby on this issue. And as you might expect, at the top of the list, the most heavily lobbied issue in Washington is the federal budget and appropriations. 4,829 clients have hired a total of 5,342 lobbyists to lobby on the federal budget and appropriation. Taxes, which is our bailiwick here, taxes are either the second or the third most heavily lobbied issue, depending on whether you're counting the number of clients or the number of lobbyists. If you count the number of clients, taxes are the third most heavily lobbied issue in Washington. 2,286 different clients hired 5,014 different lobbyists to lobby on taxes. Now, 5,014 is the second highest number So if you're counting the number of lobbyists involved, taxes are the second most heavily lobbied issue in Washington. If you're counting the number of clients that are hiring those lobbyists, it's the third most. Either way, taxes, a huge, huge amount of money is spent lobbying Congress and the Senate on taxes. And we see the results of that every week in the Congress.gov segment here on FAIRtax Power. I can guarantee you that a lobbyist of some kind is behind 95% or more of the stuff that we look at on FAIRtax Power Radio Congress.gov.
Without a doubt. Federal budget and appropriations, that's just an amazing number. Out of the clients, 4,829, there are 5,000 lobbyists, individual people who are there. If you go over to the lobbying segment and click on bills, you will see the volume of bills that are being lobbied. And of course, you can drill in and get great details out. But the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, H.R. 1, garnered a total of 2,145 clients over the time period that it was being debated and passed. Blue Cross Blue Shield, top activity, number of reports and specific issues within H.R. 1, American Hospital Association, the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, Comcast Corporations, General Motors, Altria Group, Federal Express, Berkshire Hathaway, they're and many that you probably have never heard of, but Charter Communications is somebody, but everybody has an interest in that particular bill when it was going through Congress. Can you imagine if you and I had a lobbying firm that we could go up there? You think how you think we would do?
Oh, mercy, I don't know. Against what's up there already, I'm afraid we would only make a small drop in the bucket compared to what would we lobby for? I mean, obviously, we would lobby for the fair tax to try to get folks to realize that you do not have to pay income tax. You can have a tax system where Uncle Sam does not grab a big chunk of your money before you get it. You can have a tax system where the government does not have a huge repository of your most sensitive personal information that can be hacked or sold or leaked or whatever. You do not have to have a tax system that requires you to provide that information on a tax return. And you can have a tax system where you get a tax refund every month. Folks, that is the fair tax, and that's what we need. All right.
I'm just going through looking at the clients lobbying on taxes, as we talked about within the division of the lobbying and what are the categories. There are 2,286 clients, as you mentioned a moment ago, and there are a lot of the clients of the lobbying firms that are across many different bills or across many different issues that are before our elected representatives. Here's just several that are like right here in North Carolina, for example, Duke Energy, British American Tobacco on behalf of Reynolds American. You just go through and look at, of course, Charter Communications with Spectrum is everywhere. There's 2,400 plus records in open secrets. You could spend an entire weekend drilling through all of this information to find out who's actually putting the money into our elected officials' pockets. I'd be interested to drill all the way down into the bottom of the barrel, so to speak. The smallest lobbyist firm that was out there and what they focused on and how successful they might be and what they're able to bring into the coffers for the politicians.
Okay, a really interesting list that I found is who are the individual Congress critters? Who is getting the most of this lobbyist money? So it listed the people in Congress who are receiving money from lobbyists, or at least that was reported. I imagine there's a lot of it that still goes on under the table. But at the top of the list, the most heavily lobbied person in Congress up there, Maria Cantwell of Washington, $708,620 from lobbyists. Bob Casey from Pennsylvania was second. John Tester, Montana, was third. Angela Also Brooks, I'm not familiar with that name. She's from Maryland, is fourth. I do recognize list person number five. That's Kamala Harris. When she was a senator, was getting heavily a lot of lobbied money. $597,410 of lobbyist money went to Kamala Harris. Sherrod Brown of Ohio is sixth. Martin Heinrich of New Mexico is seventh. Tim Kaine from Virginia is eighth. Jackie Rosen from Nevada is ninth. Now, this is not supposed to be, we try not to be partisan here on the Fairtax Power Radio, but the top 9 recipients of lobbyist money are all from the same side of the aisle. Number 10 was a gentleman named Ken Calvert of California. Don't recognize that name. Number 11, Steve Scalise. I know who that is. Mike Johnson is next. Lisa Blunt Rochester is also on the list. And Tom Emmer. But if you scoot down a little bit, this kind of surprised me that Donald Trump, $368,518 worth of lobbyist money went into Donald Trump's pocket. And he's not in Congress.
It's quite an interesting way to look at it. The lobbyist finances are deep and wide in Washington, and sometimes the citizenry benefits, and sometimes we get left out in the cold.
Yeah, Marsha Blackburn, Hakeem Jeffries, Ted Cruz, Kevin McCarthy, all those people are on the top list. That is the top 25 out of 100 people that the OpenSecrets.org lists as people who are receiving money from lobbyists. And actually, they've got 2 columns here, from lobbyists and from lobbyists plus family. So if a particular lobbyist's spouse is giving to the same person, then if you add that up there, Maria Cantwell, the most heavily lobbied person up there, $752,466 she accepted from lobbyists plus family. And it just staggers your mind as to how much money it takes to do this. And now we see where most of that money is coming from, and we know that tying this back into the fair tax, most of these lobbyists do not want the fair tax, because that means that the Congress critters will no longer be able to sell tax favors and bury them deep in the Internal Revenue Code. And again, as we mentioned, taxes are either the second or the third most heavily lobbied issue in Washington, based on either the number of clients or the number of lobbyists. So the influence on tax policy from the lobbying group, what have you, is just immense. That's why it is so hard for us here at Fairtax Power Radio to try to conjure up the kind of support, the kind of public support it's going to take to get these Congress critters to open their eyes and realize, hey, wait a minute, the lobbyists can fill your pockets, but we're the ones that can vote for you. And, we have got to make the fair tax a winning issue at the ballot box before we ever expect to get it. And it's going to be that hard with this much money lined up against us on the other side.
Without a doubt. And the vote, you mentioned it just a few seconds ago, voting is the key. First of all, finding someone in your district or in your state from a Senate standpoint who would be interested and be a good candidate, who would commit to supporting the fair tax, and then voting for them and finding other people to do the same thing and supporting their candidacy and moving along in a positive way that way. It's not a smooth, efficient process because of the nature of campaigning. But you have to do what you can do to find the people in your area that would be interested in supporting HR 25 as it is presented every year when Congress has a new session.
Yeah, another interesting list here at OpenSecrets.org lists the individual lobbyists. Now, of course, nobody's going to recognize any of these names, but the individual lobbyists that are handing out the most cash. At the top of the list is a guy named Chad Sweet, and it breaks it down. He gave a total of $595,176 438,000 and change went to Democrats, 51,000 and change went to Republicans, 75,000 went to super PACs. So you can see that whose lobbyists are giving most of their money. The next one, right on the number two, was a Jeff Kimball, who gave nothing to Democrats. All of his money went to Republicans and super PACs. So it's kind of interesting to see the partisan divide. Who's handing out the most partisan cash here, and that list is here on the top lobbyist contributors list at OpenSecrets.org. This is just fascinating stuff to read, even though I don't recognize any of these names. I kind of recognize one, Heather Podesta. I don't know Heather, but I do recognize the name Podesta. And again, that was heavily in favor of the Democrats. 322,000 to Democrats, 3,000 to Republicans, and 100,000 to super PACs. But it's just cool how much stuff these OpenSecrets.org folks have actually uncovered and compiled. All from public sources. And again, it shows you what we, the people, are up against when we're trying to get the Congress critters to listen to our concerns and take our best interests to heart.
Well, and here's an individual who's up there. His firm is called Ballard Partners, and the name is Brian D. Ballard. And we're not shining the light on anybody for any particular reason other than here's just some interesting data out there. Brian Ballard has been hired so far by 268 clients in 2025 that include Abbott Laboratories, Accenture, Advanced Financial, Advanced Micro Devices, Airlines for America, Amazon, Express, the American Healthcare Association, the American Hospital Association. So the lobbyists have a particular area that they focus on and get good at and create relationships. And that's how it's done. So we look at it from the other perspective. We create relationships with our elected officials. And I heard Steve Hayes make a comment one time about making a phone call to your representative and call every week and say, where does my representative stand on the fair tax on HR 25? And you get enough of those people doing that, and after a while, the staffer that gets the call is going to say, well, I'm getting all these calls from people that we want to know where you stand on HR 25. And if enough of that happens, then we can affect some positive movement toward the enactment of HR 25.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, that's all the time we've got for digging around in OpenSecrets.org this week on FairTax Power Radio. We'll do it again next year, maybe about this time, to see what's changed. Probably not much is going to, but I think it's just fascinating and eye-opening to see the extent to which lobbyists literally own our government, and we're gonna have to overcome a good bit of that to get the fair tax passed. But we, the people, I think, can still get it done. It's going to take some doing, but we're going to do it. That's going to wrap up this edition of FairTax Power Radio. We are, again, slap out of time. Thank you so much for listening and sharing the videos to your family and social media contacts. Till we meet again, I am Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
We are the FairTax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
we'll demand it.
So tell me, how could I pay less taxes?
Less?
Yeah, I'm trying to get ahead, so how can I pay less?
Well, I suppose you could pay less taxes by earning less money, or you could give to charity.
How is that going to help?
Actually, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but if you know the right people, okay, or if you have a really good lawyer, you can usually get around the big ones.
If I may. Under the fair tax, to pay less taxes, you would simply consume less. You would control how much you pay and when you pay your taxes simply by choosing what you purchase and when you purchase something.
So I could stay focused and get ahead.
Exactly.